This week on the agenda, we're in Switzerland at the World Economic Forum, where China's message to the global elite was invest. We're open for business. Welcome to the agenda from the Swiss town of Davos, where global leaders and business gurus have gathered to transform the global economy. The big theme of the week: cooperation in a fragmented world, something that China's Vice Premier Liu He said couldn't be more relevant than right now.
We welcome more foreign investment in China to prevent and diffuse economic and financial risks. If we work hard enough, China's economy will see a significant improvement in 2023, and it's a high probability event that the economic growth rate will reach a normal level. We also expect that China's imports will increase significantly this year, investment will increase substantially, and residents' consumption will return to normal.
Of course, some countries already have close socio-economic ties with China. I spoke to Pakistan's Foreign Minister, Bilawal Bhutto Zadari.
I had the privilege of meeting the Vice Premier of China here at Davos earlier today, and as far as his talk was concerned, the messaging about China being open for investment but also to engage with the world is very important, because there are many countries out there that perhaps want to or heighten geopolitical tensions or see their national interest in an increase of tensions. But Pakistan is not one of those countries. We would like to build bridges. We would like to find ground where countries can cooperate. We are facing many challenges that are, existential challenges to the human race, whether it's the COVID pandemic, which was a once-in-a-100-year pandemic that we're still sort of feeling the aftermath of and the economic consequences. Climate change is devastating. All of us in Pakistan, we had the largest climate catastrophe in our history, with a third of our country's landmass underwater, following the droughts, the historic drought in China. And recently, you would have seen that whether it's Australia or California, they're also facing flooding. So the climate crisis is something that we should be cooperating on. This conflict with Ukraine and Russia has its own complications. So I think I was very encouraged by the statements of the Vice Premier, and I believe that the vision and leadership that China is demonstrating through this difficult phase is much appreciated.
He also reiterated President Xi's line about moving away from that Cold War mentality and countries working much closer and cooperating rather than pushing it against each other. What opportunities do you think that brings for Pakistan and China?
I think first that this is the sort of leadership that is required on the world stage. It is time we move beyond small groupings and get out of old, outdated Cold War thinking. And the test for global leadership will not be of conflict. The test to global leadership would be about our ability to cooperate on the multitude of challenges that we do face. As far as Pakistan's role in all of this, in the past, Pakistan has played a role as a bridge between China and the rest of the world. We pride ourselves on the role we played in the establishment of diplomatic relations between China and the United States in the past. And today, we would like to play the role as the bridge between the international community and China and encourage engagement, cooperation. We believe is good for our neighborhood, is good for the entire world if we can all work together to confront the challenges that we face. We're incredibly inspired by President Xi's vision and consistency on this topic, as far as moving away from bloc politics, from Cold War mentality, and engaging with the world.
And part of that vision, of course, is innovation, investing in infrastructure, the Belt and Road Initiative, and you have a close relationship with China on that, and both seeing getting economic rewards with that link between China and Pakistan. Talk us through how that's working out.
So as far as the One Belt, One Road initiative is concerned, we see the China-Pakistan corridor as a flagship, as a key corridor as part of the One Belt, One Road. We've definitely seen benefits in Pakistan since we started this initiative with our communication infrastructure, with our energy infrastructure, with our ports infrastructure, and an impact on the lives of average Pakistanis, an economic impact and job opportunities. And I believe there's a lot more for us to unlock economically with the continued success of the One Belt, One Road and the China-Pakistan economic corridor.
And what about China reopening post-COVID? What impact is that going to have on your economy, on those jobs that you were talking about and those relations?
I think that the COVID pandemic has had economic consequences for everyone globally. And it has economic consequences for China as well. I'd like to commend the Chinese leadership for the leadership they demonstrated throughout this crisis, for the value they attach to their own citizens' lives, to their own citizens' health above everything else. And now, having gone through the most difficult period of the COVID pandemic, that China is looking towards opening up, I believe. That'll also open up economic opportunities. I'm particularly excited. Travel has been quite restricted, so I'm hoping to get in a lot more visits to China now that the restrictions are easing. We recently did visit with the Prime Minister and had our first meeting with President Xi in China, and our first meeting with him on his first trip out of China on the sidelines of the SCO. But I think both politically, diplomatically and economically, everyone's looking towards the opening of China.
Well, you're talking about the movement of people.
Yeah.
What about the movement of goods, though?
So we are very keen to enhance our economic activity between the two countries. We are keen to enhance the export from Pakistan to China. I think there are many ways that we complement each other's economies, and we're working on ways and means to take full advantage of the economic potential between the two countries. I believe that following COVID, but also the floods in Pakistan, which had an outsized impact on our agriculture, that we have some difficulties in this realm, but we'll be on our feet, on our feet soon, and we're starting our reconstruction and rehabilitations from the floods. So going forward, I hope to be able to take full advantage of the conducive environment that China has helped facilitate. We've got free trade agreements and such for the movement of goods between the two countries.
And speaking of economic growth, you mentioned before that Pakistan has been acting as a bit of a conduit between the United States and China. So I wonder what you think about what appears to be a sort of new era of protectionism. I'm thinking about President Biden's new inflation reduction legislation, which seems to be aimed quite squarely at China.
So I think there are a couple of things. As far as inflation is concerned, that's an issue that all countries are facing, and I'm sure that all leaders prioritize addressing inflation within their own country with whichever means they can. There are many positives within a lot of the legislation that President Biden has done, particularly around climate. I think that there's been a lot of as part of some of the domestic legislation, a lot of refocusing on what can be done vis-a-vis climate change. But as far as protectionism is concerned, I think that's definitely not conducive, not in anybody's national interest, and not in our international interests as well. I'm used to hearing our Western friends talk about the free market and how the importance of the free market, and it does seem strange that we seem to be moving away from that concept. I think it's important to have healthy competition between countries, but ultimately it would be more prudent if we don't follow the protectionist path that has been followed in the past. In history, we've seen how when countries have adopted protectionist measures, it's not only not been beneficial, it's been counterproductive. It hasn't achieved what they desired domestically, and had international consequences as well.
It's interesting that you say that the conversation is changing. There does seem to be a different tone at this World Economic Forum to previously. It's almost like everyone's trying to out-subsidise each other.
Whether it's subsidies or sanctions or any sort of punitive protectionist measures, I think that we've become too used to deploying these tools that should only be deployed in the most extreme circumstances, rather than it's becoming increasingly a regular option for countries to deploy protectionist, punitive economic measures, whether it's subsidies, whether it's sanctions, and by and large, I don't think that's healthy for the global economy.
Let's talk about the cost of living crisis and climate crisis, two themes that I know in your country you're particularly aware of. How they intersect is going to be interesting, isn't it?
Absolutely. So we have an economic crisis at home, some of our own making or our predecessors' decisions have resulted in economic difficulties for Pakistan, but also in a large part due to events out of our control. The COVID pandemic has had its impact on supply chains and on inflation. Then there's the war with Russia and Ukraine and the associated sanctions, which also had a knock-on effect, not only for inflation, but for our food security, for our energy security. And finally, the devastating climate catastrophe that we faced earlier this year, another event out of our control, has had an outsized effect on our economy. And it has particularly been devastating for our agriculture sector, which is the backbone of our economy. We had 5 million acres of standing crop destroyed just in that one, sort of the floods in the monsoon. Then the second crop, which the first crop was our rice crop and our cotton crop. The second crop was our wheat crop, which is due to be sowed in the southern areas of my country in November. And that too, because many areas either were still flooded, or even some areas where the water had receded, they were still damp, so that crop had also been affected. So as far as inflation is concerned, food security is concerned, we do face an extremely difficult and testing economic environment, and we're not alone in this. This is something that is being experienced internationally. But I would say, given the scale of the climate catastrophe in Pakistan, our challenges are unique.
Well, you've managed to secure $9 billion worth of pledges from the international community. I know that is not going to scratch the surface, but how encouraged are you that the conversation is being pushed up the agenda, and that it might be able to help other vulnerable economies around the world?
I think that's you've hit the nail on the head. That's exactly what's so encouraging about the response. We've had an amazing response to our Climate Resilient Pakistan conference that we had in Geneva, where we crossed our target of $8 billion and received $9 billion worth of pledges. Of course, there's a lot more to do, but it's extremely encouraging that the entire world, from the east to the west, united, stood shoulder to shoulder with Pakistan in this difficult time, both on the during the relief phase and now during our reconstruction and rehabilitation phase. And it is encouraging for those who in the future worry about facing a similar climate catastrophe, that we've shown that the world will stand in solidarity with you. And I think it's a new concept, because in the past we focused simply on the humanitarian side, but this time we've included a development conference in order to build a resilient Pakistan, build back in a better, more green manner. And I think that is something that can serve as a model for countries in the future.
Can I ask you one more question?
Final
want
question.
to know what's your biggest worry? Is it inflation? Is it climate? Is it war? Something else?
The biggest worry for 2023 is the economy, and the economy. There are incredibly worrying signs everywhere, whether it's war, whether it's climate, whether it's the pandemic. It's sort of created an alarming situation on the economic front. The talk with by international financial institutions and financial experts about the potential of a recession in 2023 worries me. It's sort of the one issue that causes sleepless nights. The people of Pakistan have faced extremely difficult economic times, and I hope to be able to alleviate their problems, but we are concerned that were we to see a recession, the brunt of that would be faced by be felt by the poor people across the world.
Coming up on this special Davos edition of The Agenda, what businesses make of China widening its doors.
What do we mean when we talk about the difference?
Brazen axe.
The difference is in the detail, the background,
Defense ministers from
the wider angle and perspective of every story. Wherever the story may be. CGTN. See the difference.
Welcome back to The Agenda at the Davos World Economic Forum. Here, the focus has been on building the markets of tomorrow and the role that China can play in that. I spoke to Peter Voser, CEO of engineering giant ABB.
We are serving all industries in China. We are very present in all of our four main businesses, with most probably the process automation, the smallest one. We have this big manufacturing place now in robotics because we see China as the biggest robotics market in the future, quite clearly. And we have had a strategy for the last few decades of producing locally and selling locally. So we are less exposed to geopolitical issues in China. We are less exposed to technology which can't be brought into China because 90% of what we sell in China, we produce in China. We produce it with our technologies in China. The robotics factory has a big R&D center, has an AI center attached to it. So we look at these things as one big market, one big country. It's, by the way, the same in the US. 90% of what we sell in NAFTA is produced in NAFTA. And therefore, that is key to our strategy. And that's why we are rather more optimistic and more resilient in China compared maybe to some of either competitors or other industries which have relied on importing or exporting out of China, and that has never been our business model. So we are happy where we are. We see a lot of potential in the medium longer term, a little bit choppy most probably, as I said already in 23. Geopolitics will be a key risk to be watched, but I think we are well placed to participate in the key drive by the Chinese government to focus on local consumption and local manufacturing and local production, because that's what we have been doing for a long time.
So you're all about innovative technology. What role can that play, though, in sustainable development?
It's the absolute key. Innovation is key for getting more energy efficient, with the latest versions of electric motors and drives which we have, with electrifying commercial buildings, private homes. You can save from 20 to 50% anything in terms of energy, and that's what we need. We do actually not need too many new innovations because we have a lot already there, but it's going to be more. If I look at smart home steering, on how you integrate renewables, how you integrate, let's say, your charging on the electromobility side. These are key technologies which we are bringing to the market as ABB, and they are absolutely necessary. And it's not just in our business. Look at oil and gas. They need to kind of direct money to more R&D to come up with new solutions, new products. And you could do the same across everything. Let's maybe use, if I have a few seconds more on this, mobility, the charging business which we have. We are a global leader in this. We are electrifying the charging business across the world, and that is needed in order to facilitate the change from combustion engines to electric engines. And these are the type of technologies which you need and investments in order to deal with the big issues which we have, which is climate change, which is serving society in different ways, being an attractive employer, and you can go on.
Well, when it comes to economies, though, like China, for example, all this innovation and good intentions aside, isn't the challenge here sustainable growth? Isn't that really what you're looking for? You know, keeping the economy on track while then reducing environmental impact.
Yeah, sustainable growth has to be on everybody's strategic agenda, because just growth with kind of let the earth suffer more is not going to work. But I'm of the very, very strong opinion that you can drive sustainable growth and contribute to climate change, contribute to consuming less of the world or of the earth, and still grow. But you have maybe to take a more medium long-term view. You need to invest. And the investors, when they are short-term focused, they don't like a lot of capital expenditure, but that's what you will need in order to actually achieve sustainable growth over time. And I think the S and the G of ESG, this is all about serving all stakeholders. Clearly, the shareholders are very important, but we need to serve society as well, and therefore we need to accept that more investments have to be done for future growth. And it cannot just be a straight line all the time. It needs to be more flexible. But I think we are getting there. The understanding of investors are moving in the right direction.
What about investor appetite in 2023? Co-CEO of the Hong Kong Stock Exchange, Wilfred Yiu, said that the markets will benefit from China opening up.
I think it's great to see Vice Premier Liu yesterday, right? He came out and actually talked a lot about and give the world a lot of information about what's going on in China, the progress it has made so far, and the economic planning for the coming year. And most importantly, I think what we are seeing is actually the recovery of economic activities post-pandemic, right? And China is actually doing quite well in that, and he quoted a lot of the hospitalization rate and the infections and all those things going on. I think that a lot of those things are kind of behind us. It's actually turned out to be a substantially faster recovery as we would be expecting in this year.
Well, let's talk about the Hong Kong Stock Exchange, because you're really a gateway, aren't you, between East and West? And I wonder what you think is that magic ingredient that makes you a financial hub that stands out against the others?
Very simple. I think what capital wants is actually to connect with the best opportunities available there. And markets want choices. And what we want to do is actually bring the right opportunities, people who have the right ideas, the right opportunities to bring it out to the markets to allow investors to have that choice. Now, a lot of innovations and creativity and developments we have seen in China are already there. And our market is offering that opportunity for them to come and attract the relevant capital. Now, away from that, we are seeing an acceleration of a lot of the reforms in the China market, which is going to bring along a increased set of opportunities for international investors to play with, and that is huge.
What though, and where? Which sectors do you see the growth coming from?
We have done quite a lot of reforms in the last couple of years. Since 2018, we have brought along the Chapter 18A, the biotech chapters, the WVR, etc. And today, new economy stocks account for about a quarter of our market capitalizations and accounting for a majority part of our trading activities. So Hong Kong market itself is already very different compared to, let's say, a couple of years ago. And like what you were mentioning before, we are the super connector between the East and West and present a lot of opportunities in especially the new economy sector. Second area, I think, which is huge and is a total game changer for us, is about international companies primarily listed in Hong Kong will be eligible for mainland flows, what we call the southbound flows. And we have seen a lot of those interests from the mainland investors. This year in particular, we are seeing like those southbound flows coming into Hong Kong market, reaching something like 40 billion Hong Kong dollars a day in terms of trading activities. That's huge and a lot of opportunities for us to explore.
And that's a change, isn't it? Because previously you focused on attracting Chinese companies. Now you're looking to lure international companies for a primary or even a primary or a secondary listing. So what breakthroughs would you say are being made?
I think first what we want is making sure all the rules, as Hong Kong is always very good in setting the standards and the rules and making sure all the participants are very clear about the setup right? So that setup is pretty much in place. And second phase of it is including, for example, our activities around international marketing. We just recently opened our US office.
Yeah.
Right, and that's huge. It's to connect the people, no matter it is the investor base over there, or even potential issuers, to actually considering listing another listing here in Hong Kong to explore that opportunity.
Okay, so you're on a marketing drive, but only, I think, 2 international IPOs happened in 2022. So why is it taking so long to gain momentum?
Hong Kong has always been the gateway for a lot of international capital into China. And we've been very, very busy on that, right? Last year, we brought along like 90 transactions, and we ranked like top 5 within the global IPO fundraising kind of circle. So we have been very, very busy, and we want to bring along actually more issuers into our market. But notably, last year was a difficult year, right? I think it's not only for us, but for a lot of other international exchanges. But we are very grateful that the Greater China as a whole, if we look at Shanghai, Shenzhen, and Hong Kong, we have been doing quite well, right? We are in the top 5, 3 of us. So I think that gives me a lot of confidence that we are going to bring along more in this coming year.
But there are challenges, aren't there, in harmonising the economic and the political interest between Asia and the West. US-China tensions weigh on your profit potential. So how do you address that?
When you can have an opportunity to have a win-win, you work on the win-win. And there's a lot of win-wins in the capital markets, in the way the economies itself is integrated so much in terms of China and the rest of the world, right? So when we bring those 2 things together, one is the economy, the other is the markets, right? You are actually allowing capital to be precisely deployed into opportunities where the economic growth will be tied to. And that's the job that we are doing, which is our primary role is actually to foster the best market environment for investors and for issuers to come in to offer that transparent, open, safe environment for people to transact. And that is what we are very proud of. And that's why we are the super connector, the super gateway to China.
Let's talk about investor appetite, because there's a lot going on, isn't there? High interest rates, higher inflation, all of these geopolitical tensions that we've touched on. The after effects of the pandemic as well. I mean, what's your take on investor mood, where it might head in 2023?
The reality is that I think the confidence level cannot be very, very high, right? We have seen very high inflationary number. We have seen very high interest rate environment. And despite there's some sign that the inflation may be tapering a little bit, but we never know when the interest rate is going to stabilize and actually maybe coming to a place where it can be lower, right? The interest rate level that we're operating in is actually the highest in past decades, and that gives a lot of challenges into a lot of businesses. Now, that is one side of the equation. The second part of the important equation is, while you can stay there, worry the whole day, and not deploying your investment strategies, but that's not the best thing to do. The reality is, when there are challenges, there's always the emergence of opportunities. And as investors and traders, what you need to constantly evaluate is actually that opportunity set and the risk matrix that goes along with it. And I've got to say, I am relatively positive about 2023. And the main reason is because how China is likely going to be contributing in terms of the economic growth in that environment. And the cycles that China is in currently is somewhat a different cycle comparing to the rest of the world. It actually has lower interest rate, and it is about to have more pickup in economic activities, in particular in consumption and investments, because now your activities is starting to resume after borders reopening. So we are going to add a lot more in terms of the value that's going to helping the global economy in terms of stabilizing the growth trajectory, and at the same time keeping a lot of the inflation at bay. So I'm hopeful that that is going to help and bring a substantially better market environment.
You can watch every episode of The Agenda in full on CGTN Europe's YouTube channel. And for exclusive extra content from me, my guests and the rest of the team, don't forget to check out The Agenda Show on TikTok.
Coming up on a future agenda, does the world need more growth, or are there different ways to power the future? But for now, from me, Juliet Mann, and from all of the Agenda team here in Davos, goodbye.